True Faces Unmasked is a podcast of candid conversations that explore the intricate layers of our unique identities, worth, and value. I'm Lorin.
I'm Paige.
I'm Kim. Let's unmask.
Welcome back, everybody.
Woo!
True Faces Unmasked. And today we wanted to kind of continue our conversation that we had in our last episode, but a little bit different. So we're really thinking about transitional moments in our life, big or little things that happen that just completely shift how you thought things were going to go in your life that aren't going the same way, whether that's big or small. I think that's a good topic for today.
Yeah, that was a good explanation of it too. Atta girl. But so, like, for example, last week we talked about the postpartum, right? And how that changed you two so much. Not changed necessarily for a bad thing, but it did change you. And how we then kind of discussed, well, I'm not going through life. I'm going through a death transitional moment, and how I'm still having the effects like they did with life and in a happier way, but it's still happening. And so we're like, I think there's more than just surface level of the postpartum transition in your life, that there's actually a lot of different transitional moments that make you into who you are almost.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, and that will take you out of, essentially, it's kind of like going from one stage in life to another stage in life. And it doesn't even have anything to do with aging, I don't think. It has. It's like we're moving from one thing to another.
Yep.
And I don't actually think this ever like stops. I don't think you ever like get somewhere and it's like, oh, I've arrived. I'm never gonna transition again. You know what I mean?
Great.
Life is always going to happen until you're dead.
And I don't. Yeah.
I mean, I don't plan to experience that, but that's fine.
But I mean, that's so true, because it was like, I don't think I grew up. I always think I'm growing up, and I'm like, oh, I'm growing up. Like, oh, I've grown up. Nope. Like, then something else happens, and I'm like, oh my God. Like, this is what adulting is. And then I'll go through something else, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what adulting is. Like, oh. So, like, for example, I mean, thank goodness I'm a little healthier to talk about the death now, so I'm not bawling on you guys. But for real, with this whole, my boyfriend's dad passing away, and it's a different perspective too, because it's not my parent, but it's someone I've been with for 6 years. I've had a relationship, a different relationship than maybe my boyfriend or his family have had, And so it's just kind of interesting, because then it's like, that's gone. But I'm also at this point where I want to be a mom. I see everyone having kids, getting pregnant, having, getting engaged, all these happy quote unquote things, And then this happens, and it's like, I'm changing. It's like I have a mutual understanding with people that are a lot older than me. Usually when they would see my boyfriend, they would, condolences. And then they would just kind of look at us and they're like, it's just life. It's just life. It's like, that's all anyone could say is just like, that's just how it is. It's just life. And so it's almost like I was hitting a new level. Like, all of these people were like, this is how it is now. And then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like this is what we go through the rest of our lives. Like, oh my gosh, which it seems so dark, but it's just honestly a reality. And I can tell that I'm maturing. I'm learning new things. I'm going through those experiences that are changing me, but I feel like it's not changing. It's more of like an upgrade to a new level. Yeah. A new level of life.
Yeah. You're leveling up.
Yeah. Maybe it's not in the way I wanted to, but it still is.
Yeah.
So, and it's happening. But yeah.
Well, I think transitional periods aren't always easy. I don't think they're often easy, I would say. And before we started recording, I was trying to think of like some different like major milestones that tend to happen in an adult's life, I would say. So like going from high school to after high school, whether you're going to college or if you're jumping into a career field, but you're going from a system in which you're kind of told what to do all the time. You have to ask whether you can go to the bathroom. You have scheduled lunch breaks. Like you're given assignments. If you don't turn them in, there are repercussions. Sounds very similar to a career, but it's different. And transitioning out of that like way more structured system into something that is a little more free and where you kind of have to make your own decisions. You have to set your own alarm. Like you've got to get yourself up in the morning, right? I think that's a big transition. It was for me.
Yeah. I remember after I graduated high school, there was no conversation about it or anything. Right after I graduated high school, I was going out to hang out with a friend and I was given no curfew. My parents were just like, okay, just let me know when you're home.
You're like, what?
You don't want me home by a certain time. They're like, no, like whatever. And it's just like a weird, like, we're not going to talk about this. It's just like graduation day. Boom. You have no curfew. You are free to stay out as late as you want. I was still home, but like I wanted to go to bed.
I totally want to put another perspective on it too. So then think of that, how you explain like all that structure, all that process, and then add being an athlete to that, because that was my life. So not only did I have the school structure and all of that, like a job or like a career, but then after school, I went to practice, and I had to be to practice at a certain time in a certain outfit. We did certain things. I was done at a certain time. I'd go home. I'd do my homework, but that was it from high school and college. So it was like, it didn't stop after high school for me. When I got to college, it was the same thing. I still had 6 a.m. weights. If I'm not there, I'm running. Like, you have practice. If you're not there at this time in this outfit, you're running. Like, you have games. You're in bed at this time. You have curfew. Even though you're in college and you're 20-something years old and you're living on your own, you have a curfew. Even if you're at your own house, they were like, we expect you to be bed or not drinking. Like, well, even if you're of age, you cannot be drinking within 48 hours of game time because that's against the NCAA rules. You get drug tested. I got drug tested in college. Like, I had to be there at 5 a.m. If I wasn't there at 5 a.m., I failed. And I would have been kicked off the team, even if I didn't get tested. Like, that's how strict the life has been. And so it was like, once I graduated softball and I graduated college, that was a whole nother, I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
you know?
Imagine, yeah.
But that happens to people in high school too. And then they get to college, well, there's a whole nother world of fraternities and sororities. And so it's like sometimes people graduate and that is still a structure, but it's still very freeing compared to being in high school when you're, say, a multiple athlete. So you're going to school now, and in the spring you're one athlete, and then you're transitioning into the fall another athlete. So I knew people that were like 3 sport athletes, had all the structure, got to college, got in a fraternity, lost their minds, like became a completely different person. Not for the better. And it's like it's just all those different moments, and especially the structures. And that's why I was glad you brought it up. Like, literally school is like having a career before going into an adult career.
It is.
But then when you put those sports on top of it, and now it's a whole different level. Like, college D1 athletes can be sponsored by big brands. They can graduate and have all these big brands. And it's just insane what has come out of all that structure. But then we wonder why suicide rates are up. We wonder why depression's up, anxiety's up. Like, look at the amount of structure we're trying to keep people compressed into. But then when there isn't a structure, we lose our minds.
A balloon.
Yes.
Just, here you go.
I mean, yeah. And I think that's a really good example of the kinds of transitions we're talking about. Because there are small transitions that happen. You know what I mean? You might move apartments. You might, I don't know, get a different car. You might get a different job. But I think that it's some of those really big ones that almost can feel devastating to who you are and how you have functioned. Even if it is like for the good and for freedom. Sometimes it can feel like devastation when that structure is torn down and it is almost an overnight thing. And I think that's kind of where I was with the whole postpartum thing. Was there was a structure. There was this is who I am, how I function, what I do. And then it was, even though I saw it coming, it's not like I wasn't expecting it, right? I had a lot of months to prepare. But all of a sudden, it was completely different. The paradigm shifted, and
really,
it is like, that's done, and now it's this.
You really have no context until you're actually experiencing experiencing it for yourself.
Yeah.
People can tell you all day long, but unless you have any context, like it's just going to go in one ear, out the other. And you're just, because you have nothing to like relate it to.
Right.
Because it's like nothing else.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we're all like, agree.
Agree.
Dang, that's crazy because I have not experienced that yet, but I know I will. And that's kind of like, I know feel like I should be prepared because I get the experience from you guys and all that, but it's like, I still have no idea.
Because it's going to be completely different.
Because I also,
anyway.
yeah, I'm like,
I mean, a lot of things are going to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
Things are going to be normal. Things that happen to me are going to happen to you. But it's still going to be your own experience.
Isn't that so crazy?
So I know.
Right.
It's like it's going to be the same, but it's going to be different.
And so, yeah, I was like,
At the same
after I experienced going through this death that's hit me like really hard, really different. And I don't know if it's just because I'm in a different time of my life or what, but or because I have a significant other that is also going through it as well. And that hurts. That hurts when someone you love is hurting and you can't help because he can't help me. I can't help him. We're just going through it. So it's kind of cool to see that work its way too. But, oh no, I forgot what I was going to talk about. That happens. But so honestly though, but just with those transitional moments too, I think that's cool because yes, we've been together for 6 years. We've had, like we talked about, that expectation of us having kids and all that put on us. But yet we're going through this. And I think I know it's making us a lot stronger. So then we're going to be more prepared for that, So as much as like these transitional moments are hard, they may suck, they're necessary. And that's what I was going to say. And it's also something that everyone experiences. That like opened my eyes when people started to like, people I didn't know would look me in the eyes like, it's just how it is. That's just life. And I was like, holy cow, there's people around me suffering like all the time. And I was like, but we just put on these masks and act like we're fine. And then what? Like, then you lose it at some point. But it's just like, it's just crazy to me that really opened my eyes to the point that like, we gotta just let those burdens go.
Yeah.
I know.
I have two things I want to say about this. Number one, I think I'm just going to be real critical for a second. I think it sucks that people say that. Oh, it's just life.
Oh,
like, okay. Like, I don't
Every
think,
time someone,
I'm sorry.
I'm better now.
No, I don't love the response because here's the thing. It is something that happens to a lot of people and a lot of people experience it, but every single time it's different and for every single person it's different. And so sometimes I think saying, oh, it's just life kind of devalues that process that you're going through and sometimes can place inadvertently, and I don't think this is like something that people intend to do, but it can inadvertently place some shame on like not handling it as well as maybe you think someone thinks you should or whatever. Yeah. But I mean, grief is a very real process, and I've never seen two people handle it the same way. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so number one, I just want to say that. So I'm sorry, but I'm just going to.
No, I'm glad you did.
I'm just going to rip that Band-Aid off.
I'm glad you did.
I just don't. I don't think it's cool. I don't think it's fair. I think it is a cop-out.
It's kind of like
for not relating. Like
asking when you're getting married or having a kid thing. We said, stop asking that. And quit telling people it's just a part of life.
Sure.
You're never really ready.
Yeah. So what was the second thing?
I mean, it's true. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it is true, but it's not a reason to just dive in head first.
Sure.
That's not the reason.
Sure. The second thing I wanted to say was I think going through some of these hard times, and most of these transitional moments are not going to be easy. Sometimes they are. We talked about the sneezer in the last episode. If you didn't hear about it, like go back and listen. Sometimes it's easy, but most of the time it's not. And I think it's one of those things that you're talking about, you and your boyfriend going through this and it making you stronger. I think there's an opportunity in that when you're going through that fire, it can either like be forging and create a new strength in you, or if you don't handle it well, if you refuse to go through it, if you ignore all the things, I think that it can also make you brittle and frail, which is hard.
It's hard.
But I think that none of these situations are meant to actually break you. And I think it all depends on your determination to come through it. You know what I mean? And I think that regardless of where you start from and regardless of where you're going, there's always an ability to come out on top, and there's always an ability to come out stronger. I don't think it always happens on your own. I think there's huge value in community, whether it is a single person that you can confide in, or if it is a big group of people who've got your back, whatever. But I think that there's such value in that, because sometimes when it's just you, you can feel like you're spiraling, and you can feel like there's no end in sight, and you can feel like it is so unique to you that no one else could possibly understand.
That's a great way to put it.
And I think it's just so isolating when we're meant to do this together, you know? So those were my two things.
Those are great.
Sorry.
No, that was great. Yeah, I remember right after I had my first daughter, it was February of 2020. We all know what happened in 2020.
I try to just block it out.
It was like right after I had her, boom, everything shut down. I'm not going anywhere. I probably wouldn't have gone anywhere anyway, but
wow, I didn't even write that as one of the transitional moments. Like literally, what is that? A global shutdown?
A global pandemic?
Global pandemic, that was the word.
Yeah.
Like that in itself is a transitional moment for a whole...
For an entire world.
Literally, I was like, it's not even like multiple generations.
Right. Have you all been to a movie theater on a Friday recently? It is like, there's hardly anyone there anymore. Even on a Friday.
I believe it.
Crazy. Anyway, but yeah, I had a baby, and then everything shut down, and I didn't go anywhere ever, and not even church on Sundays. You know how I say, it takes a village? There's no village. So I can definitely relate to the spiraling, not feeling like anyone's there, because I would experience it all by myself. And I didn't know how to communicate to my husband when I was going through, and he was going through his own stuff too. And so it wasn't until after I was out of it that I realized, like, oh, I was probably in a depression. And even if you would have asked me, I would probably like, no, I'm fine. I'm like, oh, do you need to talk about it? He's like, no, I don't need to talk about it. I'm fine. So, I mean, anyway, it is what it is. I'm over it now.
Are you?
Probably not. I feel way more like myself.
Yeah. Good.
So I am out of the depression. Doesn't mean I still don't, experience some of the same feelings, but I don't spiral about it anymore. And I feel like I actually have community now, because I actually do have community now.
Did you find that by choice? Like you noticed, like was there just one day? Because I know like I go through my own depression very frequently, unfortunately, but I've had to find ways to manage it. Did you ever feel like there was like a day where you were just like, I feel a little better, so I can take this step? And did you like take a step, or did you just notice it?
Not really.
Okay. You just noticed it got better?
After I had my second daughter, no joke, like a switch flipped in me.
But that's how long was that though? Like how long?
After I had my second daughter, she was born 3 days after my first daughter's second birthday. So my daughter was 2.
So a couple years.
So
think of that.
So I had 2 years of not being me.
And not realizing it.
And not even realizing it.
Yeah. Because I think that's important for people to know. Like, you may not even realize it.
Yeah. I had her, like a couple weeks passed or whatever. And Mitchell stayed home with the girls one night while I went to church by myself. And I didn't do anything fun with like crazy with my makeup or anything. I didn't wear anything fancy. I didn't do anything different, really. But a lady came up to me or 2 people, I don't remember, said something like, "You look really nice tonight."
Aww.
I'm like, I just like, why? I'm wearing the same clothes.
Uh-huh.
And the lady just like, it's your countenance. Like everything about you just looks brighter and happier. And it was just like night and day difference. So yeah,
that's interesting.
it was weird. So it was nothing that I did. It was hormonal, I guess.
I think that's important though, because now looking back, you realize it.
I wish I would have realized, but if I would have had more community,
but not even.
I would have. I don't know.
But I think it's something
known.
like I'm a hard learner. I have to experience to understand, and so it's
True.
like it could be that like the
True.
Lord took you through that, and so He could like now you're seeing that, and you're like I went through that, and yeah, you wish you would have known the things you know now, so you didn't have to, but
Yeah.
it happened. Now you don't have to go through it again because you know you can choose and you know the ways, or you're starting to learn, different tactics. So I just think it's important
I'll
for
be able
people
to recognize it if I start going through it again.
or to give people hope. Like if they feel like they're just in that rut of 'cause 2 years, that's quite a while, and if you're in that rut and you don't realize it, but things just aren't right. I mean, just there's that little bit of hope, even if it's a day. Like it's when you're in those moments, it feels like a lifetime. So it's like just knowing that little bit of hope. Okay, you're in it, but someone else has been through it and they got through it, and now they're finding ways to help it because it doesn't stop just because you went through it one time and now it's over. Like you have to learn to manage it. So I think that's important. And thank you for sharing that. I liked that story.
Yes, and there's even more behind like my whole pregnancy and postpartum stuff that I've dealt with. Like when I got pregnant with my first daughter, I started losing my voice. And apparently it's a normal thing, although not widely known about. It does happen. When I got pregnant with her, I started losing my singing voice. Like I probably started losing some of my talking voice too, but really I could talk, I could do everything. If I talked to you, everything would probably sound normal, but I could not sing. Like let's see, it was probably by Christmas time. She was due in February. Or she was doing at the end of January. She was born in February. Anyway, by Christmas time, my singing voice was completely gone. And I loved. See, I don't even know how to answer this anymore. Do I love singing anymore? I really don't know anymore. See, transitional moments. I don't even know.
Exactly.
When I was all growing up, junior high, high school, I was in choir, show choir. I loved singing. I was on the worship team at church, and asked me at one point. I'd probably been like, yeah, I would love to be a worship leader, a singer. Like I would love to actually be a performer, do something like that. And so because I loved to sing. And then some time passed. I wasn't on the worship team anymore, and was just happy being in the congregation for several years. And then after I got pregnant, my current worship leader at the time asked me, he's like, "Hey, would you like to maybe be on the worship team?" Like he heard my voice for the first time, and it's like, "Yeah, I'll think about it." And then after I made that decision to think about it, my voice started to slip away. Like it was a fun little timing there. And by Christmas time, it was completely gone. And my midwife was like, it'll take some time. Like, but after the baby's born, it'll slowly start coming back.
That's so crazy.
Y'all, I didn't have my full singing voice back for, oh my goodness. I probably should have done the math before I started talking. It was over 3 years.
Dang.
Wow.
Because it was before she was born, and it wasn't until after my second daughter was born when it actually got fully back. So it was like over 3 years where I could not sing. I could not vocally worship.
Wow.
Which broke me.
Yeah.
Like I would try to sing at home. I'm going to cry thinking about it. I could not sing. I'd be at home. I'd be at home broken, angry at my baby because I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do. I'm like, okay, well, if I can't do this, then I need to worship. I need to sing. And I couldn't even sing. Like literally, it would like I could talk, and then anytime I would try to sing, it would literally be like
Oh,
nothing for 3 years.
gosh. Wow.
And now ask me now. Now it's not that big of a deal. Oh, I've got some like pent up emotion that I just hasn't gotten out. So I still get emotional about it. And because it was a big deal. But now I've come through it and I don't have that same desire anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't even answer. I'm like, do I love singing? I can't even answer that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's gotten to this point where I used to dream about being on stage to sing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I still have that same dream of being on stage, but it's more like teaching,
Mm-hmm.
talking, being vulnerable. Like, you know,
Which is kind of like singing, just
which, you know,
pivoted to be a career. You know, something that's like maybe like we were talking about kind of before the show. Even though it was something you loved, maybe still do love, you haven't found that love yet again or haven't really explored it.
now I'm hoping to get my passion back for it again. But I don't expect it to be a desire to be on stage and perform and everybody hear me. Like,
but you do still have it. It's just different because it's
not to sing.
It's
like,
about others almost, I think. It's almost
it's
like
more about others than about me being heard, which is another thing about me.
Isn't that crazy though? It's like the seed and the.
Well, then again, I still want to be heard because I'm going to be talking.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like the seed was planted then, but it was like you had to go through this transitional dark time to learn.
Mm-hmm.
You can
Which,
still.
Otherwise, if I wouldn't have gone through all of that and gotten to the place that I was, taken away all of those things, like we were talking about with the last episode, me not knowing who I am in motherhood was because I couldn't do all the things that I wanted to do with like crafting and creating things. And so if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have been looking for another avenue. And now I have my new business and I love it. I'm going to continue it. And that's where I want to be on stage for that. Talking about that. I might throw in a little ditty here and there, but you know.
That's so fun.
That's funny. So I would love to talk about when transitional moments turn into traumatic incidents. Because I think that, first of all, I think traumatic incidents can cause transitional moments,
100%.
right? I mean, you could be in a horrific car accident and it can completely change the trajectory of where you're going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It can like immediately throw you into that transition. But I also think that there are times when there are these transitional moments that can then become traumatic and then cause these triggers for things because there's a feeling of such deep loss. You know what I mean? And I guess I want to talk about that a little bit because I talked earlier about allowing these transitions to like forge strength, like you were talking about, or it can make you kind of brittle and frail, which I don't think are actually the best words to use. But I think sometimes when they turn into trauma, that's when we feel broken by them. And that's when even if we go past them, even if we move past them, if it gets brought up again, if we think about it too hard, if something starts acting or behaving the same way or seeming like it's going in the same direction, it can immediately trigger a different response that then takes us out of the transition that we're actually in and puts us right back into the old transition. And then
It
that's
derails it all. pretty
right.
much.
That's when things can get cyclical.
Mhm.
That's when things can get that's when a lot of times you might start spiraling, like any
or get dark.
right, any hint of like going back to this that caused that trauma can like really make you go back there.
Mhm.
And so I guess I want to open up to talk about some of that because trauma is very real
Mhm.
and it really can shift the way that we react to things, right?
Mhm.
So if there's a death in the family,
Mhm.
if there's something that happened earlier in your life, there can be something in that transition that has nothing to do with that, but that will trigger it. And then you'll start behaving from that place instead of like fully in this transition. Does that
Yep.
make sense at all?
It makes
Maybe a little bit.
a
Okay.
lot
I might
of
need a little
sense.
help, but it's okay.
And I think, unfortunately, there's different levels of trauma. And I think the more levels you've been through and experienced, again, I'm a very experienced person. I know I've been through some trauma that may not relate to anything someone else has been through because it may have been on surface level way worse, or someone else who maybe just hasn't experienced a trauma yet, which I live in that fear almost sometimes that like, I feel like sometimes I get scared and I expect something bad to happen to me because I feel like I haven't experienced some things that some others have and I should have. Isn't that really dark? Like, it's true
happens.
though, but I've also know I've been through some stuff that like I haven't even talked about to really anyone. And I'm like, I wonder if others have been through something, you know, it gets me thinking. It's just kind of crazy to think about how everyone goes through different traumas, but trauma is not something anyone talks about. That's probably the traumas is what gets pushed down so deep that you don't want to let out because if you let it out, it's opening Pandora's box and it may put you through another transitional period, you know?
Right.
It's like you went through that. It may have been 10 years ago, but it's like you went through it. It happened. You shoved it down. You swallowed it. You moved on for all these years and you don't really want to open it back up. But it's like
Right.
you may not be progressing in life because you're not moving past a trauma.
I would agree.
Like,
I completely agree
okay.
because it kind of just, it can sit dormant almost.
And then whenever it comes up again, it's like you're reliving it. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yeah.
reliving it. Yeah.
Feeling all the same things, acting out all the same ways.
Mhm.
Sure. Or
And-
thinking that if this, then that,
Mm-hmm.
based on that one experience that may never happen again.
Mm.
Or expecting the worst in a
Mhm.
situation. Like,
Because it's like that happened. You never thought it would happen. You never imagined it would happen. It did. So now it's like, what if this happens? What if this happens? And it gets you in a really dark place where then you can't even move past it because you're thinking so negatively. And again, that's your own choice, but you're like unconsciously doing it because you haven't moved past that.
Mm.
And it's a lot of things. Like, I know there's people in my life personally who've been through some horrible things that they had. And like, I don't know. I'm like, I should have been a therapist, y'all. Cause I've like, people confide in me and I'm like, I can't take it all, you know? But it's like, I'm so blessed that that's the case too. But some stuff is like heavy stuff. Even when I was young that I've been confided in, like high school, like, and stuff like that friends had confided in me and it's heavy. But then it's like, then I'd been through my own trauma. I hold that. And it's like, when people share, but it's like, don't tell people, don't tell no one, don't tell anyone, don't tell anyone. And then it's like, you have your own trauma. What do you start thinking? Don't tell anyone, especially when you're loyal and you want to please others and you want to put that perfect perspective out there. Oh, my joy alarm. Sorry. But yeah, so I just think that's really interesting. And I don't know if you guys want to expand more on that or what are your guys' thoughts on it right now?
have anything?
No.
I think what I'm thinking about is actively working through the trauma, even though it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've gone through some stuff in my life that I don't know that I'll ever be willing to publicly talk about. But stuff that I shoved down and worked past, and it dictated how I functioned.
Yeah.
Like in my life, like
Yeah.
outwardly you would see, here's this personality trait. No, that is a learned response from trauma.
Mhm.
And
Okay. Yeah, I got one.
yeah. But also I guess I want to give a little bit of hope. Because I don't think it's ever too late to work through some stuff. And I'll tell you, in my own experience, not that this has to be anyone else's, but for me, when I really started running after the Lord and really started investing in real relationship with him, not like surface, like I hope somebody sees that I'm so religious or I am so full of faith. Not that kind of, but like the behind closed doors
Mhm.
breaking down into a pool of nothingness kind of. If I could put it that way, I don't know that that's the best way to say it, but that's kind of how it felt sometimes. Like in that very real, raw, authentic, bare everything kind of relationship with him, that's when I really started working through some of this and even just bringing it up to him, even though he knows. Like, I know that he saw it. I know he was there. I know that this has been no secret. He's seen how I've reacted, how I've responded, how I've changed the way that I am because of it. But even just bringing it to him and shedding a little bit of light on it, like it was a huge step in the right direction and starting to get some healing. And I know it doesn't always work that way for everyone. For me, that's what worked. And I really came to a place where I've gotten a lot of healing. I don't know that I'm 100%, like never will I ever be triggered by this. But I think sometimes being able to have that safe space to just like touch the tender spot, you know, is a big deal. And I know that I had to go through a time of forgiving myself. I had to go through a time of forgiving others. I had to go through a time of realizing that it wasn't serving me to hold on to it. And again, this is very much a personal thing. I don't think it's going to look the same for everybody, but I also know that just because there have been traumatic incidents, and even if you've held it in for 20 years, 40 years, 2 days, whatever, I don't think that that means you just now have to always have it there and festering. It doesn't have to be this open wound that never gets healed. I think there's always healing available. But it depends on you and your willingness to start the process of working through it. Like if you can't look at it, if you can't bear to even think that it happened, I think at some point you've got to get to a point of at least acknowledging it, because it's really hard to work through something that you won't acknowledge. And I did that for a really long time. So I'm just, that's from experience. Okay. Yeah.
And I'm over here like feeling my shoulders and like jaw clench up because I'm like,
I
understand what you're saying, but like keep it down. You know what I mean? But I think that was a really good explanation of all of it, because I do think it's important to share, and we do burden with each other, and that's something I'm learning. But there's just, like you said, like some things it's like I don't know when, if I'll ever share.
Sure.
You know? But it's like I have the urge to, and I want to, because I want it to help someone else. But I haven't went through the healing process of forgiving myself.
Well, I think that's the forging point. So when I was saying earlier, and then I was questioning language on this, like you can either go through it and have it become a strength, let it be forged into something that is strong and like serves you well, or it can cause you to be brittle and frail. I think sometimes when we allow it to stay in that open wound space,
I almost feel like,
I think that's when sometimes it can feel like then it's a weakness. But if you can start working through it, and it's not like it has to be an overnight thing, whatever, but I think that's where it can be forged into a strength. And it doesn't mean that trauma is good.
Mm-mm.
It's not like, oh, terrific, I'm so glad that happened. But it is something that can make you stronger.
It's not even just you, everyone around you.
And then it can serve others.
Mhm.
And it can allow people to not have to go through maybe as hard of a time as you did. You know,
Mhm.
but I think this is why community is important too.
Mhm.
Is because sometimes you do feel like you're on an island and no one could ever understand. No one's ever
Yeah.
been through anything like it before. And not that it's going to be exactly the same, but sometimes just relating with one another is so helpful.
Mhm. Mhm. That's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Boom, done.
Yeah.
Is it?
I don't know.
Is that it?
I went blank.
Mine, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I know for me, my trauma that came to my mind was with how I connect with others.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't trigger like I'm going down a spiral. It doesn't trigger some sort of like post-traumatic stress, but it just affected how I am able to connect with people.
Mm.
Like I had experience where I feel like it's making me now feel like I'm on thin ice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've got to be careful or my friends aren't going to be my friends anymore.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm truly 100% me all the time, I'm going to do something and you know, people are just not going to be my friend anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever people tell me that they love me and they envision like something us doing years down the road together, I'm like, you still expect to be my friend then?
Oh.
Like, no joke, this happened to me yesterday.
Uh-huh.
And someone said something where it was just like, you think we're going to be friends that long? It's like just this weird thing for me where it just like, sometimes I even feel like I have a hard time truly feeling connected to a friend because I don't know how long they're going to stick around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I totally understand that feeling too.
Yeah.
Or like you'll let yourself go so far, but then stop.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you just enough, but then I'm going to stop.
Because I'm
I'm
experienced
going to
this
still
before.
stay reserved.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to give you everything. I'm just going to keep a little bit. And I think that was so important with the community. Like those strong friendships, because I'm the same way. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, will these friends still be my friends in a year? You know what I mean? Or like, will these friends still? And it's like, I think the more vulnerable we are, the more we come in together with that community because we're sharing those burdens, the stronger the bond grows. But you have to be vulnerable enough to open, you know, and not just say, okay, I'll give you a little, but then that's enough. You know? Same with relationships, same with your spiritual life, you know, all of it. Like, yeah, that's a big one. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
But that's crazy.
Oh, yeah. I think this is a good topic.
Mm-hmm.
Transitional moments.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. What are some transitional moments in your life if you want to get vulnerable in the comments there?
Or let us know if there's something, you know, on a surface level maybe you've experienced you want us to talk more on. Like you feel like you've been through something surface level, a trauma, and you're like, I want to hear you guys talk more about the trauma, like, you know, or something like that, because there is things I think maybe eventually we would share, but it's like we're just starting it out. So it's like this is even something we come back to. We can continue to talk about like as we grow, as we grow through and transition through different moments of our lives where we're healed and we can talk about different things, or where we did go through a really positive transition in life too. We can talk about that. So it's like it's always going to be continuing. So I feel like I have so much I want to say, but it's like the Lord is telling me no, we'll wait for later.
Okay. Content for later, y'all.
Yeah.
Content
So
for
thank you
later.
for being on with us, though. Make sure like, subscribe, and all the fun stuff. Woo.
Okay. See y'all.
Boom, done.
That's it for today. Thanks for listening. Keep up with us on this unmasking journey by joining us every Friday.
Like, subscribe, and follow us on Instagram. This episode is sponsored by Podcast Solutions and podcasttables.shop.
As always, we're glad you're here. See you next week.
Boom, done.